class. Today we're going to learn about intervals. Now all an interval is just the distance between two notes. So that would be the distance between, say, do to re, or maybe do to mi, or do to so, or even do to high do. Those are all different sizes of intervals. And so think about that word, interval, intervals, the distance between two notes. Now, before we go on, I need to tell you this. There are no zeros in music, so don't be a zero. So I like to use the analogy of a big, tall building. So say you're in a big, tall building, and typically you enter the building on the first floor, right? Yeah, usually, not always, but usually you enter the big, tall building on the first floor. Say you get into that big, tall building and you get in the elevator and you go up one floor. Now, you don't get off on the 1st floor, you get off on the 2nd floor because you started on the first one, right? So you didn't start on the 0th floor. So that's why we like to think of the first floor as number 1 and then the 2nd floor as number 2. All you did was just go up one note or up one floor. Say instead, though, that you skipped this one and got off on the floor above that one. That would be the 3rd floor. Pretty common sense, right? Well, so that's what I want you to think about when you think about intervals. Instead of calling this 1, we could call it C. And then this, of course, would be D, and then E, F, G, and of course after that is A, B, and then you have C again. So say you go from C to D. That would be called a second interval. C to E would be a 3rd. C to F would be a 4th, C to G a 5th, C to A a 6th, C to B a 7th, and C to C would not be called an 8th. It would be called an octave. The reason why is because it's perfect. C and C, they're the same notes. Remember those metal bars we talked about on the video? Those metal bars are these same notes. So like one metal bar versus a metal bar of the exact half of the mass of the first metal bar. So C to C will be the same note. Do, do, same note. And so we don't call this an 8th, we call it an octave. Say octave. Now, when you look at the word octave, what do you see? Well, first of all, oct reminds you of the word octopus, or maybe even October. What about octagon? How many sides does an octagon have? 8. How many tentacles does an octopus have? 8. So an octave is just one note and the 8th note above it. So that would be C to C, or D to D, or E to E, and so forth. Now, one thing I need to tell you about intervals is it's a distance. It doesn't necessarily matter if you're going up or down. So A to G would be called a second, just like G to A would also be called a second, okay? E to F is a second, F to E is also a second. You're either going ascending or descending seconds or descending thirds or whatever. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about what it looks like on a staff. So you've got your 5 lines and you've got your 4 spaces. If I start on, say, right there on the bottom line, and then I go up one note, that note is going to be on a space. So a second is always going to be one line and one space. It could be going from space to line or line to space. Either one, it's going to be one line and one space. Now, if I have a third, I could go from, say, line to line, or I could go from space to space. Pretty interesting. They're both the same, line to line or space to space. Now here's the deal. All of your even numbers, so like seconds, fourths, sixths, and even octaves, they're going to be one line and one space. If I've got my odd numbers, thirds, fifths, sevenths, ninths, of course we're not talking about ninths, but ninths, 13, 11, they're all out there. They're going to be either 2 lines or 2 spaces. So say for instance I have this interval here, from this space to this space. Now, right off the bat, you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Several things. You could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and end up with a 5th, because remember where you are is 1. So space, line, space, line, space. That's a 5th interval. Also, you can remember what I just told you about if they're both on the same, it's going to be an odd number. So is 5 an odd number? It sure is. So that matches up. A fifth is pretty easy to spot because it's either going to be 2 lines or 2 spaces with 1 in the middle. Same thing with lines right here. I have a line note right here and a line note right here. 2 line notes with a line note in the middle. So that's going to be a fifth interval. If I do space to space right here, not skipping a space, that's going to be a third. 1, 2, 3. If I do a space to this line here, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a fourth. What about space to that line right there? Space to line is going to be an even number because 1 of each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to be a sixth. A space to another space, skipping 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, if they're on the same, if they're both on lines or if they're both on spaces, it's going to be an odd number. Here's space to a line. That's a big leap right there. Can you see it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an octave. Remember, it's not called an eighth, it's called an octave. Now, on your worksheet that you're going to have for your assignment this week, it actually is going to have some intervals on there, and it's going to have you identify them. Remember the clues that I told you. You can either count them, like remember to start wherever you are, go from line to space, line to space, line to space, and get 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's a fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a fifth. Or remember the clue. If there's 1 on one line and 1 on a space, it's going to be an even number. If it's going to be 2 lines or 2 spaces, it's an odd number. And the worksheet actually tells you to call an octave an eighth. You can do that if you want to, or you can just write oct if you would like to do that. So that's going to be your assignment for this week. It's real easy. And if you have any questions, send me a message and I will try to answer you as soon as possible. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good week.